In this movie we're going to look at how to create our own classes and objects using Python 3. And as usual, I'll get you to go to my homepage, click on the schedule and go to the latest schedule. We're currently actually in the fall 2017 semester, so I'm going to click here, and clicking on any of these links will take you to the schedule for CSCI 120, which is Introduction to Computer Science and Programming using Python 3. Now, there are movies on all of these topics, and you can get access to those movies here. Our final topic on this course in week 12 is programming with classes. So the previous movie introduced classes, and today's movie I'm going to talk about how to create classes and objects. And I'm going to be going to this document, and this document is a PDF document. If you click on it, you'll see the PDF document. It's got 49 pages, and this is the topic object-oriented programming. So we're going to be using Python 3. Now, there are 49 pages on this document. For this video I'm going to cover the first 21, and the remaining pages will be covered in the next movie. So, what is object-oriented programming? Well, previously we talked about what is an object, what is a class, and essentially a class is a factory for making objects. And before we can make an object, we have to define our class. Now, this particular movie, we're going to be focused on one of my example programs. So I'm going to take you to that program now so that you can put it into a Python window and run it. So to see my example programs, you can click on a new tab, go to my web page, click on Python, and then click on the example Python 3 programs here. And now the program that we need to look at today is got a title 13-01.py. So I'm going to press my function key F3 to get a search box. I'm currently using Linux, so you may use a different key to find your search box on the web page. And I'm going to search for 13-01, and here you can see the first program in a series of programs that show you how to program in an object-oriented programming method. So I'm going to copy this code, and I'll copy all of it. I'll explain the comments shortly. And I'm going to copy this code and go into your Python shell. So open up Python. Now if you're not sure how to do that, you can go to one of my previous movies that shows you how to install and run the Python environment. So this particular environment is called the idle programming environment for Python, and you can see we're using Python 3 here. So I'm going to create a new file, and then I'm going to paste what I've just copied into this window. Now this file is called 13-01.py, so I'm going to copy that name and I'm going to save with that name onto my desktop. So I'm going to save my file onto the desktop. Now this is my desktop, and I'm going to paste the file. Oh, it won't let me paste, so I'm going to type in the file name 13-01.py and save that onto my desktop so I know where it is. Okay, so if you look at the comments at the top of this file, the purpose of this program is to give an example of object-oriented programming. Shows you how to create objects of the person class and how to inspect the state of those objects. This is the date the file was originally written, and it's based on these two PDF documents. Actually, these are open document presentations. the actual PDF files that they're referring to, if you want to go to the PDFs, are, let me just copy these 2 lines and then paste them here. So these are the links to the PDF documents. So if you would prefer to see a PDF rather than a presentation, then go to, this one is the Introduction to Object-Oriented Programming, and this one is the PDF that I'm using now, which is the Programming, Object-Oriented Programming. Okay, so I'm going to, we don't really need the comments now, I'm going to remove those, so make it a little bit clearer. So here we have the definition of a person class. So I'm going to go back to my PDF. So, definition of a person class. This is our, let me just go back to Python there. This is the same content. So here we've got a person class, and here it's described in my PDF. So let's go, I'll be going from one to the other. We can start by running this code and then I'll explain it later. Essentially what this code is going to do is going to create 2 people, and we're going to have 2 person objects. We'll call the first object person 1, the second object is person 2, and they're going to be created from the person class. Here we've defined the person class, and person 1 will have a first name Anne and a last name Dawson, and person 2 will have a first name Tom and a last name Lee. Then I'm going to print the state of person 1 and person 2. That essentially will show me the first name and last name of person 1 and person 2. So here we have the definition of the person class. Now before you can create a person object, you have to have the person class. The person class, the class acts as a factory for objects. It's like a blueprint. And before you can create an object, you must have a class. Now to create the person class, this is the definition of the class. So after the keyword class, let's have a look at it in the Python program. After the keyword class, you type the name of the class to be created. By convention, the first letter of the class is uppercase. So here we have in our program, the first line of the program is the keyword class. The keywords are always in orange, and then the name of the class. Now you don't need to put the first letter in uppercase, but by convention programmers do, to make it easy to differentiate between a class and say an object or a variable. Okay, so after the person class name is optionally a set of parentheses or brackets. Now these are optional, and these optionally contain the class called object. So inside these parentheses you may see the word object, and you may not. It's not necessary to put the word object in the parentheses. Object is a class which all other classes are originated from. And the object class is implied if it's not actually explicitly typed within the parentheses. So even if you don't put object between the parentheses, it will actually be there, it will be implied. So the parentheses may contain the name of another class. So in the parentheses here you may have the name of another class that has been previously created. And if there is another class in the brackets or parentheses here, the current class, person, will inherit all the properties and methods from the class in the parentheses. Now this is called inheritance, and inheritance is explained in the next movie, and so I'm going to skip over that for now. Now, you don't need to put a class name in the parentheses here, but what you do need is the colon after the end of this line. So the colon must be there. That's part of the syntax of the language. So these three, let me just move this a little bit. These three statements here are all equivalent. They all mean the same thing. So the brackets, the parentheses are optional. Let me show you that. The parentheses, the brackets are optional. You can put the brackets in. These two are equivalent, and the third variation here is equivalent to the previous two. So you can put any of these and they all mean the same thing to Python. So, definition of the person class. Now, after the first header line for the class, we have a string. Let's go back to my program. And there is the string. Now, strings in Python are, in the editor, are always shown in green, and strings start with quote marks. They could either be single quote marks, double quote marks, and you can have triple single and triple double. These all start a string. Now, these are special strings, and they're known as doc strings. And previously, when we talked about functions, we used doc strings to document the function, to explain what the function is going to do. The same way we use doc strings for classes. And in this PDF, I've highlighted the doc strings in red. In the code, in idle editor, they will always be shown in green. A little bit of confusion for you there. But the doc strings they document the class and its methods. So the highlighted text here is, each one of these three is a doc string. Each one is documenting either the class, person class, or the methods. Now, I haven't talked about these methods yet. We've got a method called init, and we've got a method called str. And after the header of the method, we have a doc string to explain what the method is going to do. So the doc string for the person class instantiates a person object with a given name. So what that means is the person class is going to create an object and give it a name. The two methods are special methods. The special methods are shown with two underscores before and after the method name. These are two special methods, and I'll talk about them shortly. And the first one is going to initialize the private instance variables first name, underscore first name, and underscore last name. And these are here we have the private instance variable, underscore first name and underscore last name. So don't worry too much about this. I'm going to explain what's going on here shortly. So here we have the doc strings, which document the class and document any methods of the class. Now, doc strings we have come across before. This is a programming method of supplying documentation for functions, for methods and classes. And programmers should always provide doc strings in their code, and they're very easy to write, very easy to use. And they can be extracted by automated tools to get information about your functions, method and classes. And this is a quotation from python.org. The doc string for a function should summarize its behavior and document its arguments, the return values, any side effects, exceptions raised, and restrictions on when it can be called, all if applicable. So, doc strings are important. You always supply them in functions, methods, and classes. And here we've got, this is an example of a doc string that is for a regular method. No, this is a regular function, a programmer defined function, and the function is called average quiz, and we're sending it 3 arguments. Now the docstring here is describing the arguments and the return type of this function. So it's describing here in brackets, in parentheses, the data types of the arguments. So student name is a string, quiz1 is an int, quiz2 is an int, and this function is going to return a float. So the returned value is the average quiz score for the student. This here is this is a docstring, and underneath the docstring we have the keyword pass. Now, just to remind you what the keyword pass does, sometimes when we're creating a program we will provide a template for a function or a class, and we give the header of the function, we give the docstring, and then we put the keyword pass in to imply that we're going to complete this program later. So pass is a keyword, and it can be used in a function or class body, and it's just a placeholder for the code which we're going to complete later. So the keyword pass will just be completely ignored when the program module runs, and it's just a reminder to the programmer that this part will be passed, it will be ignored, and we'll come back to this later to complete the code. So excuse me. Now, if we want to print the docstring of a class that we've typed in earlier, from within Python code, you could type this. So, if we want to print the docstring of any class, this one is, for example, the person class, or the docstring of a method, this is the way that we do it. We give the name of the class, a dot, and then the underscore, doc, underscore. This will print the docstring for the person class. Now, if the person class has got a method, in this case I called it method name, then to print the docstring of the method, you would type the name of the class, the dot, the method name, a dot, and then the underscore, doc, underscore. So doc is the method that will print the docstring of a class or a method. So the underscore doc is a special attribute available to all classes and stores the docstrings for the class and its methods. Let's have a quick look at the program and see how that's done here. So this here will print the docstring for the class called person. So let's, what I'll do here is delete these for now. Let's cut them out. Edit, cut. Right, so this program here contains the definition of a class called person, and this is just the definition. When the program runs, there is only one statement, and the statement is this one, and it will print the docstring for the class. So when this particular program runs, it's going to print this line. Let's see what it does here. First of all, I've got to save this and run it, and there it is. So that is the docstring for the class, and there it is. And if whatever we type here will be printed when we issue this statement. So you give the class name a dot and the underscore, doc, underscore. That will print the docstring for the class. Now, here we had an example of a method name, so we'll show you this one later. It will show you the docstring of a method. So we'll show you that when we create our own method. Now, to print the docstring of a class from the command line in a Python shell window, then you could type help person. Now, let's go back to the Python code, and there's the shell window We see a shell when the program has run and gives the output. Now, because we have already run this code, Python is aware of the person class. So if I type help person, then the docstring of the person class will be extracted and printed. Now, here we're getting help on the person class. Here is the docstring for the person class, and these are information about the methods in the class. So we've got init, and we've got the str method, and here we've got the docstring for the init and the docstring for the str method. And we've also got various other bits of information that we don't really need to know about right now. And so here we have a description, help on the person class. Now this is help on the class that we have just created. And we can get help on any class, not just the person class. Let's close that window and go back to the program. Let's run this again. It'll open up a new shell window, and here we're outputting the docstring for the class. Now, I showed you how to get help on this class by typing help in brackets person. Now, we can see help on any class. Now, if you want to get help on a built-in class like int, string, float, list, etc., we can type help on those built-in classes. So let's try that, and let's see help on the, here I've got an example. I want to find help on the string class, so I'll put help string. Now I'm warning you, there may be a fair amount of information here, so let's just look, and yes, there is. So lots of information there, and actually it's talking about some of the methods that you can use with the string class. And if you go back to look at some of my string movies, you will see the strip method discussed, and we also use the upper method and so on. So those, any methods that you can use with the string class will be displayed when you ask for help on the string class, and you can see there are lots of them. And so that saves you a bit of time. Instead of going to the internet to search for information on string methods, you could ask for help on the string class. So in the same way, let's create a new shell here. You could ask for help on the int class. Now there may be a little bit too much information for you as a beginning programmer, but later on, as you become more experienced, this information may become very useful. So let's close this. So help on any class, whether it's your own class or whether it's a built-in class, you can, at the command line on a Python shell window, type in help, and in brackets or parentheses place the name of the class that you're interested in. So the definition of the person class, this is the init method. So in red I've highlighted the init method. Let's go back to our program here. I'm going to paste back in the code that I removed. We might need that later. So in highlighted here in red, I've got the init method. Now the init method is, here you can see the docstring. This method for the class, the init string, this method, let's try that again. This is the docstring for the class. This class person instantiates a person object with a given name. Now the next 4 lines of code, this is the definition of the init method. Now init is a special method, and it does initialization work and serves as a constructor for the class. So the init method, the job is to create an object and give it values for its instance variables. Now, the instance variables are the private variables for the object. So a class may define a special method named init, and here we've defined init, which does some initialization work and serves as a constructor for the class. So remember, a class is like a factory for objects. Init is the method that does the work to create the object, to construct the object. We could call it a constructor. Now, like other functions or methods, init can take any number of arguments. Now, the arguments here are the word self, first name, and last name. So it's got 3 arguments. So the init method is run as soon as an object of a class is instantiated, and class instantiation automatically invokes the init method. So we do not call the method directly. When we create an object, and I'll show you how that's done shortly, the init method is automatically called and then we'll create the object. But we, as a programmer, we do not explicitly call this method. So the init method, the first parameter here is called self, and this is a special word that stands for the name of the actual object being created by the init method. So self, we will see that when we're programming with classes and objects, it stands for the object itself. Now, if you know C++ or Java, self is called this in those languages. It's doing the same thing. This stands for the object that's being created. So the init method is used to provide initial values to the object's attributes. Now, the attribute of the person method are the first name and last name. So first name and last name will be given initial values by the init method. Now, how do we create objects? And here we're creating 2 person objects. Now, the first one is called person 1. This is an object, it's called person 1, and person 2 is created here. Now, to create an object of the person class, we will type the name of the class and in parentheses any values that we want to be used to initialize our object. Now, our object has got variables called first name and last name, and here we're going to be sending these arguments to the first name and last name of the init method so that it can set the values for first name and last name to the object that's created. So person 1 will be created here with the first name Anne, last name Dawson. Person 2 is an object that will be created by this statement here. We're using the name of the class, sending across the value for the first name and last name for the person 2 object. Now, if I print person 1 and person 2, what it's going to do is print the values of the first name and last name of that person. It's going to show me the state of the object's variables, first name and last name. This is program 1301, and one thing I should say, if you read this comment, is that even though there are 3 parameters here, the self parameter is not passed to the class when we create the object. So initial values are passed to the object, passed to the init method when the object is created, but you do not pass anything for the 3rd parameter, which is self. That one is handled automatically. So even though there are 2 arguments here, in the init method we've actually got 3 parameters. Self is handled by Python. You don't need to do anything with the self parameter. but it does need to be typed in when you create the init method and the str method. So now I should say that the str method is going to return the state of the person object. So what it does is return the first name and last name of the object. Now self is referring to the object itself. So if we ask to print person 1 is supplied to the str method, and the first name and last name of person 1 will be printed. If we ask to print person 2, it will run the str method for self. Self will be person 2, and it will return the first name and last name of person 2. So self is standing for the name of the object. And here we've got two different objects, person 1 and person 2. Let's go back to the program, and you can see it there. So let's go here. We're creating person 1 object, person 2 object by using the name of the class and passing to the init method the values for first name and last name. So these will be passed to the first name and last name parameters in the init method. So the strip method returns the state of the person object. So by state of an object, we're talking about the current values of the instance variables. Now the words instance variables talk about the variables of the object. Instance means the object. And here we've got the string method being called by issuing the statement print person 1. Person 1 is an object of the person class, and this statement will execute the str method automatically, and the str method will return the object's first name, a space, and the object's last name. And so there you can see that this method is automatically called when you use the statement print and in brackets an object. So we don't call this method explicitly. It will be called implicitly when we issue a print statement. This is the print function on a person object. And if you see what happens when we run, and here you can see it prints the first name and last name of the two different objects, and this is resulting from implicitly calling the str method. Notice we don't need to send anything. What we're actually sending here is the object to, and that will be received in the self parameter. Okay, so that is as far as I'll go on this movie. Excuse me. On the next movie, I'm going to complete the content of this PDF, but for now I think we'll leave it at that point. So take a look at the example program. This program is example program 13-01.py, and what this program does is define the class, and for the class it has a docstring, and for the two methods, these are two special methods, and each class should have an init method and a strip method. The init method initializes the private instance variables underscore first name and underscore last name, and the strip method returns the state of the object, and the state of any object is the value of its instance variables. So if you want to print the docstring for a class, you would type the class name, a dot, and the underscore underscore doc underscore underscore. if you want to print the state of an object, you would type print and the parentheses and the name of the object that you want to see the state of. So when this code runs, you will see the output. The first line here, let's just run this in a clean shell so we don't get confused. So the first line here results from printing the docstring. The docstring of the class is here, and the next two lines of output result from printing person1, person2, and when we print and in brackets have an object name, it will go to run the str method, and whatever you type here will be printed, and we usually print out the state or the value of the instance variables of the object, and that's it. So I'll leave it at this point. In the next movie we're going to complete the document Python 3 prog OOP.pdf.